You ever feel it? Like you're drowning in effort while they float on ease? You're out here bleeding for progress, sweating through every hour, sacrificing sleep, joy, even your sanity. And still, they keep winning. They climb, they shine, they dominate. And deep down, you hate it. Not out of envy, out of confusion. Because it makes no sense. You're smarter, you work harder, you're more disciplined. And yet, the game keeps rewarding the ones who seem to cheat it. Let me tell you something most men will never admit. Hard work is not the currency of power. Psychology is. They win not because they grind, they win because they understand how you work better than you understand yourself. This isn't about luck. This isn't about fate. This is about control. Cold control. This is about the 11 invisible weapons they use every day to bend the board in their favor, while you keep pushing the same broken cart uphill. You're not tired because you're weak. You're tired because you've been lied to. Now it's time you learn the game they play, behind your back. Stay locked in. Miss a second, and you'll go back to being just another hard-working ghost in their empire. Let's begin. Let me burn this into your brain right now. The truth is irrelevant if no one believes you. You work harder. You show up early. You leave late. But they still win. Why? Because they understand something you don't yet. Perception is the gateway drug to power. They don't grind in silence hoping someone sees. They orchestrate visibility. They craft narrative the way war generals craft propaganda, with precision and purpose. You chase being right. They chase being remembered. That's the difference between a soldier and a king. They know reputation is leverage, and they don't let it build itself by accident. They control how they're seen every damn moment, from their posture, to their silence, to their digital footprint. You think they post online for fun? You think they show their lifestyle, their wins, their carefully timed, humble struggles just for self-expression? No, it's chess. They're baiting attention. They're generating perception debt, making the world believe they're destined. So people bend before they even ask. And here's the coldest truth. The world doesn't follow the best man. It follows the best illusion of certainty. You're still out here believing performance earns respect. They know perception commands obedience. Let me say that again, and this time carve it into your bones. The man who controls perception never has to beg for submission. Let that settle like ash in your bloodstream. They don't argue, they radiate belief. They walk in with the energy of a man who's already won, and people submit, not because of facts, but because of the vibe he engineers. That's why your grind gets ignored, because you're waiting for someone to notice your value. They don't wait, they broadcast it, even if it's not all real. It doesn't matter, because influence is perception, scaled, and power. Power doesn't ask for receipts. So what now? You gonna keep sweating in the shadows, or will you start building your myth like they do? It's not about being fake, it's about being intentional. Control what they see, or be ruled by what they assume. Comment below, I don't chase approval, I manufacture belief. You're learning how to achieve great success in life, and that was just the first step. You've been brainwashed. You still believe greatness is forged alone, that isolation is noble, that being a lone wolf makes you dangerous. That's not danger, that's romanticized weakness. The ones who keep winning, they know the truth. Power doesn't come from the grind, it comes from the grid. They don't just work hard, they connect strategically. While you bury your head in effort, they're building alliances like warlords preparing for siege. They understand that in every empire, access beats effort. It's not about how much you do, it's about who opens the door. You're in the dungeon building swords, they're at the table getting crowned. And here's the lethal reality. A man without a network is a weapon without a trigger. Let me say that again. because that quote is about to become doctrine across every high-performance circle. A man without a network is a weapon without a trigger. You may be lethal, skilled, disciplined, relentless, but if no one pulls your name in the room, you don't exist. They win because they've built connective power. They know whose ego to stroke, whose opinion to elevate, whose silence to keep. They make people feel seen, so when it's time to move, doors open without knocking. They don't need everyone to like them. They just need the right 5 people to respect them. You grind harder, they get invited. You stay loyal, they stay relevant. You try to do everything alone, they multiply through influence. You're not being outworked, you're being out-networked, and it's not even close. The silent truth behind every overnight success. A well-placed introduction, a whispered recommendation, a favor owed, finally returned. And while you're trying to prove yourself from scratch, they're leapfrogging ladders through strategic alignment. Still want to be a lone wolf? Remember this. The lone wolf dies in the forest. The alpha runs with a silent syndicate, so stop bragging about doing it alone. Start designing your network like a military intelligence map. Who can move mountains with a word? Who can get you in the room? Who owes you loyalty? Who fears losing your presence? Build that. Fortify that. Because no matter how hard you grind, power is passed through proximity. You still believe emotions are authentic, that they deserve to be expressed, honored, trusted. They don't. Not in the world of winners, not in the territory of dominance, not in the game of status, sex, or survival. While you drown in emotional honesty, they use emotion like a scalpel, not to feel, but to manipulate. They understand something you were never taught. Emotions are currency, and every man bleeding feelings without purpose is going broke. They cry strategically, they get angry selectively, they mirror sadness only when it gives them power. You feel things and call it real. They simulate emotion to extract loyalty, fear, admiration, whatever the situation demands. This is why they rise, because in high-level social warfare, emotional control is psychological dominance. He who controls his emotions controls the room. Let me give you the quote. The man who can fake emotion better than others feel it becomes untouchable, because while they're pulling levers with false vulnerability, charm, rage, or poise, you're out here crying on the battlefield and calling it courage. No one rewards raw emotion, not in the boardroom, not in politics, not in the streets, not in attraction. Women don't chase emotional men. They chase men who control emotion and can use it like a loaded gun when it counts. That's why he gets the deal. That's why he gets the girl. That's why he gets the throne. He's not ruled by emotion, he weaponizes it. And you're taught that vulnerability is strength. But here's the truth. Controlled vulnerability is a tactic. Uncontrolled vulnerability is self-sabotage. They watch you rage, they watch you cry, they watch you spiral, and they smile because they know they've already won. Still want to lead with your heart? Still think authenticity is the path? Here's your reality check. Emotions are real, but power comes to the man who fakes them better than the rest. Learn it, master it, or be used by those who already have. You were raised to believe that doing the right thing would get you the right outcome. It won't. Not in this world. Not in the war of power, perception, and status. Because the winners aren't playing fair. They're playing strategic. And that's what makes you weak. You still act based on how things should be. They act based on how things are. You still believe that the world rewards fairness. They know the world rewards results. They don't ask, is this right? They ask, will this move me closer to control? And that's the only compass they follow. While you agonize over morality, they calculate angles. While you look for justice, they look for leverage. While you hesitate, they strike. Understand this now. The man who masters strategy will always rule the man addicted to virtue. Say it again, because this is where average dies. The man who masters strategy will always rule the man addicted to virtue. That quote will haunt your conscience, because deep down you know it's true. They win because they move with intent, not emotion. They see the board. They don't just react, they provoke. They engineer responses. They calculate second and third order effects. They do things that don't feel right in the short term, because long-term control is all that matters. You cling to being the better man. They become the smarter one. This is why they dominate in business, in politics, in relationships, because they know righteousness is predictable. Predictable is exploitable, and if you're exploitable, you're a pawn in someone else's mission. Still think strategy is cold? Good, it should be. Because the battlefield isn't a church, it's not about honor, it's about survival and control. Let me ask you, would you rather be admired and broke, or calculated and in command? Would you rather be liked and forgotten, or feared and never challenged? Exactly. This isn't a game of good versus evil. It's a game of effective versus emotional, and they win because they understand one law that governs every power structure. Feelings don't move empires, strategy does. You want to rise? You want to be untouchable? Then burn the fake morality. Start thinking like a king, not a people pleaser. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Why are you still trying to impress the system? When it was never built for you to win, you work inside the machine. They work on the machine, and when necessary, they reprogram it. That's why you're tired. That's why you feel stuck, because you keep playing by rules they wrote to keep you manageable. They don't respect the system. They reverse engineer it. They find the loopholes, the biases, the triggers, then they exploit it unapologetically. And you're still hoping someone hands you a trophy for being a good boy. Here's the reality. The most powerful men don't impress the system, they infect it. Say it again and say it slow. The most powerful men don't impress the system, they infect it. They don't climb the ladder, they hijack the elevator. They don't wait for permission. They study the gatekeeper's psychology and either become them or bypass them. They see the same walls as you, but where you see limits, they see leverage. This is what elite minds do. They study reward mechanisms. They study social algorithms. They study attention funnels. They study biases in hiring, dating, branding. They find the cracks. Then they slide through with a smile. Meanwhile, you're trying to impress bosses, women, investors, friends, doing exactly what the system wants from someone it can exploit. You give everything. They give just enough and own the outcome. Why? Because they understand this. The system was designed to keep 90% grinding, so 10% can profit off their obedience. They chose to be the 10%, not by being more righteous, not by being more qualified, but by being more aware, by asking, where is this structure vulnerable? Where can I bend this rule without breaking myself? Where does the system need me more than I need it? You keep trying to earn your place. They study where the cracks are and become irreplaceable. So stop trying to be good, start becoming undeniable. You were taught to hustle, work harder, move faster, stay busy, and they let you believe that, because as long as you keep grinding, you'll never question the timing. They win not because they move more, but because they move smarter at the exact moment when maximum impact is guaranteed. This is the code they live by. Effort without timing is a loaded gun with no trigger, because it's the death sentence to blind hustle. They know when to vanish, when to strike, when to speak, when to stay absolutely silent. They know when attention is cheapest, when leverage is highest, when weakness is revealed. And they wait silently until the exact second when their move will collapse your momentum. You operate like a machine. You move the same way every day, regardless of environment, attention, readiness, or energy. That's not discipline. That's predictability. And predictable men lose. Timing isn't luck. It's a studied art. They understand social cycles. They understand emotional windows. They understand when a message, a product, or a decision will land with maximum gravity. And they move only then. In business, they don't launch when they're ready. They launch when the market is hungry. In dating, they don't chase. They pull back and return right when your emotional walls are most vulnerable. In war, they don't fight harder. They fight when your guard is down, even if it takes weeks, months, or years. They aren't faster. They are calibrated. This is why the myth of hustle is killing you. Because effort is energy. And energy without timing is just noise. You're burning out chasing seconds. They're winning decades with precision-timed strikes. This is how elite men move. Wait when it's boring, strike when it's loudest, vanish when it's expected, reappear when it's unavoidable. You want power? Then start studying patterns, not clocks. Study windows, not calendars. Because real power doesn't move fast, it moves right. Let's break one of the biggest illusions that's keeping you weak. You think the game is governed by rules. It's not. It's governed by incentives. They don't win because they play better. They win because they control what everyone else plays for. You still ask, what's allowed? They ask, what does this person want? And how can I control that? This is the God-tier understanding. He who controls what others want never needs to control what they do. That quote isn't just power. It's the core law of every empire. It's how kings rule armies. It's how billionaires move nations. It's how he gets loyalty without even raising his voice, because he knows rules only exist for men who don't understand leverage. Let me expose the game. In corporate, they rig the comp plan. You kill yourself for bonuses they wrote. In relationships, they drip-feed validation, keeping her chasing while doing less. In business, they set the trends, then sell the solution after you're addicted. And you follow. You obey. You fight for prizes they placed like breadcrumbs in a maze. They win because they manipulate your motives, without you even noticing. You think you're in control. You're not. You're a puppet with ambition, and they're pulling strings tied to your desires. But when you understand this, you flip the power. You stop reacting. You start designing outcomes. This is how elite men operate. They don't demand loyalty. They shape the rewards. They don't chase validation. They engineer it. They don't shout orders. They set conditions so obedience feels like free will. This is high-level seduction. This is quiet domination. This is how kings are made in silence. Still want to follow the rules? Then stay where you are. Predictable, programmable, replaceable. But if you want power, then stop asking, what's fair? Start asking, what drives them? And how do I build the trap with their dreams? Because when you master incentives, you don't chase power. You become the architect of it. Comment below. I don't play by the rules, I write the rewards. The next strike will go even deeper into the subconscious. Here's the part they never teach you in school, on podcasts, or inside your favorite self-improvement videos. Productivity is for pawns. Psychology is for kings. You want to be efficient? They want to be in control. You optimize your calendar. They hack your behavior. You chase flow state. They study how to influence your choices without you realizing it. That's the split. That's the line between the high performer and the power player. And if you're still caught in the hamster wheel of productivity hacks, here's your wake-up call. A man obsessed with productivity will always serve the man who understands psychology. They study how people think. You study how to get more done. They ask, what does this person fear? What do they crave approval for? Where are their insecurities buried? You're still trying to finish your to-do list. Who wins? The one who controls the mental terrain, not the one who fills their schedule fastest. They understand micro-behaviors, facial tics, subtext, status shifts in real time. They speak in emotional codes, not tasks and timers. They read the room, they read the woman, they read you before you even open your mouth. And that's how they win. Because it's not about how hard you grind. It's about how deeply you understand the battlefield. The real game isn't external, it's psychological. Control someone's self-perception, you control their choices, control their insecurity, you control their loyalty, control their validation loop. You own them, and they'll thank you for it. Meanwhile, you're learning how to check off more boxes. They're learning how to place the boxes you'll check, and why you'll feel proud doing it. Still think you're in control? If you don't understand cognitive bias, emotional triggers, status signals, priming, escalation frames, power mirroring, then you're not playing the game, you're being played. Psychology is the operating system. Everything else, just apps you download after the system's already been programmed by them. So the next time you think you're being productive, ask yourself, am I executing my will or someone else's design? Comment below. I study minds, not tasks. You're waking up now, and we're not done. Let me strip the mask off. You want to be liked. You want to be understood. You want them to say, he's such a good guy. He means well. He's doing his best. And that's why you're stuck. Because the men who keep winning, they aren't addicted to being liked. They're addicted to being in control. They're not afraid to be misunderstood. They're not afraid to be hated. They're not afraid to be feared. Why? Because they know this timeless law. The man who needs approval will always kneel to the man who doesn't. You chase praise, they chase positioning. You want applause, they want advantage. That's why they stay quiet while you over-explain. That's why they give direct answers that make people flinch, while you sugarcoat every word, hoping not to offend. They know something you don't. Being feared earns more respect than being liked. Being uncertain creates curiosity. Being unreadable creates power. You want them to understand your intentions. They want them confused about their next move. Because confusion breeds compliance, mystery breeds authority, and fear forces people to think twice before ever crossing the line. You think it's your niceness holding you back. It's not. It's your dependence on being seen as good. That's a weakness they exploit. That's a leash you wear willingly. Watch them. They're polite, but never submissive. They're cordial, but never compliant. They're composed, but if you push them, there's something cold in their silence. That's what makes people respect them. That's what gives them control in the room, without raising their voice. Here's the shift. Stop chasing validation. Start cultivating discomfort. Let people misread you. Let them guess your next move. Let them talk behind your back. Because when they don't know what you'll tolerate, when they don't know where your line is, when they don't know how far you'll go, they treat you carefully. You don't get feared by yelling. You get feared by being the one they can't figure out. Comment below. I'd rather be misunderstood than forgettable. Ready for what's next? You were taught to be open, to be real, to speak your truth. You thought if you showed more of yourself, they'd finally see you, accept you, respect you. But here's what actually happened. You gave them the blueprint to destroy you. Because in the real game, the elite don't share everything. They don't show their full hand. They control exposure. While you pour out your dreams, traumas, and tactics to be authentic, they smile, listen, and say nothing. They move like this. Reveal 10%. Conceal 90%. Let the world guess, not know. Because this is truth. The man who overshares will always be owned by those who remain unreadable. Oversharing is not honesty, it's strategic suicide. You show your fears, hoping for connection. They see your fears and store them like weapons. You talk about your plans. They listen and wait for your pattern to repeat, so they can intercept it. You expose your emotional state. They adjust their tone, pressure, and moves based on exactly how rattled you are. And when it all burns down, you call it being misunderstood. But it was never about misunderstanding. It was about overexposure. They don't just control what they say, they control what you think they're hiding. That's the real game. Because mystery is power, silence is status, and restraint is royal. Still think being real is always noble. In a world of predators, the loudest prey dies first. You're not being honest, you're being predictable, and predictable men are easy to break. So from now on, stop explaining yourself. Stop narrating your life. Stop bleeding your soul to people who can't even control their own emotions. Speak less, signal less, let them wonder. Because the moment they can't read you, you become a threat. And the moment you become a threat, you start to win. One more truth remains. If you still didn't subscribe to channel, subscribe it so you never miss the opportunity to be ahead in life. You're busy, every day, every hour, always moving, always chasing. But let me ask you this, what are you actually building? Because motion doesn't mean progress, hustle doesn't mean direction, grind doesn't mean growth. They know this. That's why they move differently. While you sprint in circles, they take measured steps toward a throne they've already envisioned 5 years ahead. They win because they think in decades. You lose because you can't think past the weekend. They're architects, you're a laborer. And here's the ultimate divide. The man who thinks in decades controls the men who think in days. They don't react to noise. They don't chase short-term applause. They don't flinch at losses because every move is part of a campaign you haven't even recognized yet. You're thinking about your next paycheck. They're thinking about your descendants working for theirs. That's the level they operate on. They delay gratification. They invest where others consume. They vanish while others post. They suffer now to own the system later. You chase dopamine. They chase dynasty. Still believe you're hustling smart? You're fighting fires they started, in a building they've already insured. That's the long game. Every mistake they make becomes a lesson. Every win becomes infrastructure. Every loss becomes leverage. And you're resetting every day, never stacking, never strategizing, always reacting. That's why you feel exhausted, because you're busy playing the same level. While they're building the entire game engine, you don't need more speed, you need a longer vision, because in this world, daily grinders get applause, long game killers get kingdoms. Start thinking in timelines no one else has the patience to understand, and you will own them all in silence. Now you know. The 11 unspoken truths. The real reason they keep winning, even though you work harder. It was never about hustle. It was never about being a good man. It was about power. You've been fighting like a warrior in someone else's war, grinding for systems built to bleed you, chasing validation from people designed to control you. That ends now, because awareness is the first weapon, strategy is the second, execution, silent and surgical, is the third. You don't need to scream, you don't need to announce, you just need to start playing the game they never wanted you to see. Stop trying to be impressive, start becoming unpredictable, stop chasing approval, start studying psychological leverage, stop trying to win today, start building a legacy that outlives their applause. Let them keep running, let them keep chasing likes, trends, comfort. You move in the shadows now. You study the room before speaking. You speak only when it moves the needle. You execute like a man already sitting on the throne, even if they don't see the crown yet. And if you're ready for this shift, you know what to do. Comment below. Ghost Kings move in silence. I've entered the war. Now, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, because this isn't motivation. This is where cold minds are forged to control warm empires.